Hello, and welcome to Connected Intelligence Live, our next episode or the current episode. Thank you for joining us. At Inspire XT, our mission is simple but demanding. We exist to connect commerce to operations, to help organizations turn their ambition into execution, and to build supply chains that are not only efficient but resilient and intelligent. However, across the boardrooms, across our business leadership community, some common priorities surface. Everybody is grappling with this new phenomenon called AI. Of course, that's always a hot topic. But there's something more fundamental post the COVID era, which is how do we continue to build a resilient supply chain? Because it's not one-off event; it's an ongoing process. How do we convert this AI into an intelligence that our operations become more uh, efficient and seamless? The sustainability agenda is moved from just merely a reporting agenda to a design principle for the supply chain. So, how do we bring that to the supply chain design itself? Our colleagues, our people are facing this challenge of AI. So, how do we empower and develop them as well? And of course, across the boardrooms, the CFOs are asking, show us the money. By doing all this, it has to also convert and turn into predictable enterprise value over time. So the pressures are real. Of course, um, these are not optional ambitions, they are fundamental and structural needs of the modern enterprise. And it is the whole phenomenon of AI is affecting small, medium, large, single, global, local, you name it. Everybody needs something to do something about it. But we still hear repeatedly that every time there's a need, organizations responds with more tool, more experiments, more dashboards. But it turns out that resilience is not a tool. Resilience is a property and a product of how you architect your enterprise and how well and how disciplined you are in building using that architecture. And that's why we are here today. Why we believe that today's discussion will help us unpack how do we take this pressure that is coming on us from AI and others, how do we convert that into real momentum for the organizations, and um, what can we do short, medium, long-term basis that builds the organizations, build the supply chain. And to help me unpack all that, I'm delighted to be joined by to the very best our industry has to offer. My friends, my colleagues, and my customers. There's all sorts of different relationships we have been on together, but both of them are here for the first time on this podcast. Uh, Clearly not for the last time. We will have more discussions. Today we are getting started on the architecture and delivery. So let me invite them one by one to introduce, and they've got lots of war room stories and lots of personal stories, of course. So I'll start with you, Joe. For our audience, please introduce yourself and also give us one or two fun facts about yourself. So
Hi everyone. So I'm Joe. Currently working as a solutions architect. Been in this game, I guess, for many years, and multiple projects successfully delivered across different types of enterprises. Yeah, what can I say? We've fought some battles together, and we've won some, and some have kind of fallen away. But it's been good fun. guess fun fact. I don't know. I mean, like fun fact is just getting involved, getting to know the technology. I tend to be more technology focused as opposed to delivery focused. I'll leave that to Jeff on the delivery side. How do you go deep?
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. Well, Jeff, then you know the drill. Joe has already laid it out for you. So,
He has, and he's done it very well. Good afternoon, everyone. Jeff Lloyd, part of the InspireXT team, focused on helping our customers deliver all of the technology and capabilities they require to improve their business. Done it for a number of years, like Joe as well, mostly from a delivery perspective. I've got a couple of interesting fun facts. My last 3 employers, De Beers has been one of our customers. So I guess I've had a number of years working alongside Joe and Kuldeep with the De Beers business, which has been fantastic. The second one, which is a little bit strange and weird, is I'm sat in my home office today, and I don't have many pictures in my home office. In fact, I don't have any of well, actually, I have one of my son, but not of my wife. But I do happen to have 2 pictures of Joe.
Okay.
I have more photos of Joe Sangali in my home office than I do of my family. And I should probably put that into context because we've been lucky enough to share some time on golf courses in the past. And yes, I've got a couple of nice corporate photos of us standing in fantastic locations about to have a great round of golf. So yeah, I should probably explain the context of why I've got photos of Joe in my home office. But there we go. So
I'll go with the below par golf game that took place on those days. Well, it's only on my part, not on your part, Jeff.
awesome. Well, that's really good. Welcome, both of you. I think it's not often we bring this topic together. I think there's a lot of discussions around what's AI, what can it do for you, and we've got quite a cognitive overload of that topic. But I do feel what we're going to talk about today, it was relevant, it is quite relevant even now, and it will continue to be, and it's actually even more relevant as we go into the future as well. So, and I think, Joe, if I start with you, typically, you say you are more focused on technology, but I think you have this sort of great balance of understanding the business, the strategy, the sort of ecosystem of SIs and vendors, um, and that's a skill and competence and area of need for many enterprises.
Mhm.
I suppose you are the best person in that sense to describe that when technology is involved and when supply chain fails or is under stress, what what do you think breaks first? Is it the process? Is it system? Is it structure? I mean, there are so many different elements. You can see that from multiple angles. So I'd love to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. I mean, I think both of you, as well as people I work with, I always go back to the fact that it's not about the tool. The tool just enables the process, but it's being clear about what is it that we want our process to be, and then map it to, okay, what are the tools that we need? And again, just being agnostic around it could be this particular tool, or it could be a custom developed in-house developed tool. But when if we're focusing on the supply chain side of things, my view is it's not the tool that's broken. It's basically the approach the business has taken into the use of that tool. So classic examples could be scenarios where there's been a lot of transition within the organization. So again, it's kind of like immediately I think the gut feel, the gut reaction from most organizations is, let's just blame the tools because it's not delivering what we want, but we're not prepared to address what the actual problem is. So I think it is to just to rethink. Okay, it's definitely not going to be the tool that's the problem. I think it's more about how we've implemented the tool, how we're using the tool, and have we got the right processes in place, and do the processes that we want now actually are mirrored in the tools. Sorry,
Yeah.
I've just
I think
gone
that's
on there. Hope
that
that makes sense.
absolutely makes sense, and I think it's as I said in the intro, that resilience, we are looking for resilience in a tool,
Yeah.
whereas the resilience is in the chain, in the process itself. And I guess through that sort of lens, if we talk about alignment,
Yeah.
the strategic sort of top down and bottoms up in the organizations, often there is a challenge in that. So how does that affect in building a good enterprise architecture or a progressive architecture in your perspective?
I always look at okay, well, what is it that we want from an organization perspective? So it is about understanding and understanding in a clearish way, because it's always difficult for the business to say, right, here's what we are trying to achieve, here's what we want. And then map it out to, okay, do I, as an enterprise architect, as a solutions architect, understand what the ask is? Does it make sense? So, or first and foremost, always challenge it back to say, right, is this truly what we want? Secondly, then after that, it's basically taking that, then talking to the people that are actually running the systems, the tools, the processes, and looking at, okay, well, does this kind of make sense, and what do we need to adjust, and how do we then play that back to the multiple vendors, InspireX or any other SIs around, okay, how do we go about building this out?
Yeah.
I'm always looking at, okay, well, there's got to be a pragmatic approach in how we implement that, because it's about understanding that top level message, but then also understanding the bottom level process that is being addressed, or that needs to be addressed, and make sure that, okay, there might be certain things that we will have to do manually, or certain things that we just have to take away.
Yeah.
But there are other things that we should look at. Okay, how can technology truly help us enable that lower level process, but also achieve the top level message effectively?
Yeah, well said. I think that we speak about architectural coherence. Of course,
Yes.
you're dealing with not just so many moving parts of the technology side. You've got business stakeholders also with divergent views, and rightfully so in some areas, of course. And there's a lot of education, and that alignment does play quite a role in that. And Jeff, if I bring you in this sort of theme, obviously it's all about then once the architecture is there, it's all about then making sure it's actually put in place, as Jeff described. So, but when you see some sort of a fragmentation in architectural blueprint, so to speak, because there are some reasons for that, constraints. How do you see that friction appearing in the execution of a program or a transformation?
It's a good question. So I think mostly I would say from experience that friction shows up earliest and probably most visibly in the handoff points. And we're talking across sort of people and teams, systems and data flow. So where they have to come together and intersect, but they don't share that sort of common architecture or operating model, or as you said, it's sort of fragmented. That's where you really see the friction come to life. And some of the symptoms, I'd say, around that, excuse me, are like duplicated build effort, unclear ownership of services sometimes, for sure, definitely incompatible data models, and then that sort of constant rework because those upstream decisions don't align with the sort of the downstream dependencies. And I guess over time, with the change in delivery, sort of trying to pick out some of the positives, working in a more agile way, then you can see that quicker and sooner, and then hopefully address it. We all remember the old waterfall days when we would all disappear into dark rooms and do stuff for many, many months, and then come back with ta-da. That the impact would be bigger. So, trying to find a positive in that friction. I think the ways of working allow us to identify that, but you still have to do it. But yeah, absolutely, it's sort of in those handoff points where you can really see it.
Yeah, and And in that friction or in that fragmentation, of course, sometimes the clarity is visible or not visible of the executives and the program side of things, for example. So, how critical is that dimension in ensuring that the common theme of building a resilient sort of architecture is preserved, and what role does delivery play in that?
It's yeah, I mean it's hugely critical, and yeah, keeping on the theme of sort of the fragmented architecture from a delivery standpoint, you know, you tend to see that sort of velocity slowing, and it's not because the teams aren't performing; it's because the architecture, because of the fragmentation, because it's unclear, it's not giving them that stable runway to work from. So it sort of results in the delivery squads having to sort of negotiate integration in real time almost, rather than sort of building on a consistent set of patterns. And that's where we see sort of delays, defects, scope creep start to appear, which can be hugely impactful to a delivery program for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I think I think what you want to say is,
The question I'd like to ask, Jeff, how do you manage that, right? Because that's always been the challenge, which is you see the fragmentation happening, you see the diversions from the architectural principles happening. How are you guys coming back and saying, "Hey, freeze, stop, halt"? How do you manage that?
A lot of the time, the reality is it will come down to the team and the people you got involved with. So, not wanting to sort of put you on the spot, Joe, but if every program has a Joe Sangani that has the technical architecture understanding, but also the business awareness, having people in roles with those sort of skills and capabilities, they're going to be able to sort of bring it to the forefront of everyone's attention, flag it, and move forward. And this is why we always call out that having sort of the technical knowledge and background is phenomenally important. Of course it is, but being close to the business, understanding the business and the impact, that's where we can make a real difference to stopping these things from derailing a program and getting us back on track. So yeah, a long way of sort of answering it. It's having people who are technically strong, but also business savvy, and that's where I feel that you can be successful.
yeah. And just to add to that, and to also summarize this sort of what I've just heard, I think what we're saying really is that you know this building something that is resilient, sustainable. Of course, it does require some structure, but it also requires lots of kind of negotiation and trade-offs, and not everybody is going to get everything. But I guess if we start with what the organization requires to do, then those trade-offs start to become a bit more structural and coherent, rather than I do things like this and I must do this going forward. It doesn't matter what else happens. The um, challenge with all of this is that the organization is set up as silos. That's the design of the organization. You can't do anything about it because these are vertical silos. But the customer experience is always going to be horizontal, right? Because it's not just one department who is responsible for it. And that's where architecture does become that blueprint, so to speak, in my view, which has set its destination aspiration of the future, but is also flexible enough to adapt and adopt what's going around over time. And that's kind of what I've seen, Joe, you do as well from time to time, to have people to say, take a step back. What are we trying to achieve? Okay, maybe we should experiment a little bit, but let's not forget that ultimately customer needs to be addressed, right? And I think that's bringing that coherence is quite good. So thank you for your perspective. I think it's hugely important that we don't jump to integrations and technology, and we're talking about supply chain, of course, and we're talking of supply chain from architecture and delivery lens. Supply chain is a lot more than that, of course, but it's so important nowadays that it's sometimes not even clear is technology running the supply chain, or is something else running the supply chain? Because they're so integrated with one another. So, and let's sort of move to the next segment of my question that I wanted to talk about, which nicely I think you started with. We talk this whole idea of commerce to operations balance, or signal coherence, or connection, and um, obviously, as I just said, customer requirement is met through number of steps that are run by number of silos, if I may use that word. Uh, so, how does one architect a connected process model, or a how does one translate those signals into those operational sort of needs, uh, that the signals don't distort along the way? Because that's the real danger of not having something that actually goes horizontally very well, right?
I think so. The way I look at it is basically, so we're getting those signals from all the different areas, and these are all, I look at signals for me is just another way of understanding what the requirements are. It's looking at those individual requirements, signals, making sure that it does map back to what alignment that we're trying to achieve. Even if you've got signals coming from different areas within supply chain, it is just looking at, okay, well, does that make sense back to what we're trying to achieve? Does that still make sense back to what we're trying to achieve? It's just making sure that we're consistent with what that signal is and what we're trying and how we want to implement. I'm not going to say even was a solution to it, but implement whatever it is that is required to ensure that we've got consistency across the final solution and the different signals that are coming through. Because customer A might want, I want this, but customer B might be like, oh, I want that, which is completely counter to that. Well, I think sometimes I play the role of, okay, are you two talking to each other just so that we are aligned on that message, and then we can take it away and then look at, okay, well, what does that solution look like, and how do we go about implementing it?
And what role does the process design take? Because that's often also a moving feast, right? So
it is. It's understanding those messages, signals, looking at, okay, well, what is the intended process? What are we trying to align to? Someone said a strategic objective, whatever that is, and then linking it back to saying, okay, well, have you documented the process? How does that part of the process impact that particular person? Bring it all back. Then work with the experts to say, right, does this make sense, and should we move forward on this, or do we still have some open questions before we start again looking at implementing something?
Jeff, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think Joe's covered it nicely. So yeah, I couldn't top that.
Sure, awesome. So look, I think
sorry, one thing I'm going to add. Sorry, Philippe. So it is ensuring that we've got that process alignment across that. But key call out also is not just the process alignment from us as a customer, but it's also interpreting that back to you guys, to the suppliers, to ensure that you understand that as well. Because again, when we're defining that process, whether it could be me as a customer coming to you to say, let's look at implementing this new process, or however it is, you guys should also be in a position and challenge me, or challenge us as customers to say, actually, we've seen this. What why are you thinking about that? Does it align to what everyone else is doing?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so I wasn't going to comment, but now you brought that bit up, I guess that there is something, because we've all seen a lot of. So when I started work, which was many years ago, a business and its process, a lot of what accompanies success, its secret sauce, was built into some of those processes. As we moved to SaaS and cloud, and we were all encouraged to adopt best practice that big systems providers and software companies were were effectively selling because they were talking to all the big companies in the world and learning how they did it. There's been this sort of phase where we've had to negotiate and land on, when do you fully adopt best practice versus how do you protect something that was part of the secret sauce that made your organization and its processes successful. So that's been, I guess, an interesting change for all of us from a customer point of view and a supplier point of view. We have moved towards best practice because that means that you don't have to customize, say horrible words like that, solutions to do that. But it's always an interesting debate and conversation for sure.
And I think if we continue that theme right now of process and data and signals. So Jeff, from your perspective, we are talking about commerce to operations models we delivered. How does the sort of fragmentation in these various elements that we need, products and stock, and now we're talking real supply chain impact of this. There's lots of things that need to fall in place before we can deliver on that promise. So when they are not synchronized, what happens, and how do we go about solving that?
So I think the first thing that I would advise, if that's the right word, is you can't start off, you can't treat order management, inventory, pricing, product data as separate domains. They have to act as sort of one system. Again, coming back to the points you were making earlier on, Kuldeep, from a customer perspective, it's all one thing. So if we have misalignment, if they're not synchronized, if they're fragmented from an operational point of view, that's going to start to create a huge amount of operational pain. It can result in overselling, incorrect lead times, wrong pricing, fulfillment failures, and all of these have a huge impact on that customer promise. So I always start by thinking, yes, when it comes to that OMS, inventory, pricing, product data, it is one thing, and we have to think of it that way. If we can start off on that foot, then we've got a fighting chance of getting it right.
Yeah, that's so true. We've seen it time and time again that the silos of the organizations are actually visible through the commerce trade as well. There's separate silo for the commerce, but finance is still the common element, the same cost and same profitability and cash flow, and then there is impact of that at the end of the transaction or at the end of the month or quarter, whatever is that you're measuring. But customers' impact is almost instantaneous. They can see that you promised something, but now there's a whole range of disconnection going on that I can't, as a customer, know what's happening with my order, for example. I think and fixing that disconnection without the data model is an uphill battle. It never ends because the core hasn't been fixed. So I think that one system analogy and approach would resonate with a lot of people who are trying to, or whose ambition is to continue to offer that service. Obviously, no discussion nowadays is, ever complete. We are not yet complete. Ending our we're right in the middle of the conversation. Let's bring that topic of AI or intelligence. Joe, this is something that I'm grappling with as an architect and as a supply chain person from time to time as to how is my role evolving, right? So as an architect, how do I bring this great piece of technology which has huge potential, huge prominence, but it is, it can be hugely beneficial at the same time, conversely also quite detrimental. So how do I evolve my role as an architect when I'm embedding that piece of tech in my business.
So I wouldn't say I'm grappling with it as well, just like you are. I think the whole industry is kind of grappling. This is my personal view on this topic. So AI seems to be, and again, let's be clear. Gen AI seems to be the answer to all our problems, that, including the problems that we didn't know we had. So it is kind of being pitched and positioned that way, and you can be up to date with all the news going on. And there are some challenges as an enterprise, as a solutions architect, enterprise architect, I'm kind of grappling with, which is, okay, we've got different flavors of AI. I could go down a specific application stack and they'll be like, oh, you can throw AI on top of that. But then I can go down another route and you can throw AI on top of that. And then we're kind of getting into this whole agentic AI piece as well, which is like, oh, you can have an agentic AI going from this stack to that stack to that stack, and then do some actions for you. You can write my emails, looking at the personal data I've got, and then just responding to whatever email Kuldeep sends me. Like, that's a possibility. The thing that for me I always go back to is, okay, yes, it will solve a lot of problems. It will solve problems that I didn't even know I had. It can tell me, it can give me some really meaningful insights. However, what I always go back to and talk to most organizations, including is, it's about, okay, do we actually have the data that we need? Because without the data, AI is just not going to do anything. Then we can talk about whether it's going to be this particular AI or that particular AI. But it's just making sure we're grounded on data and make it accurate as possible. So that's the challenge, effectively. It's not, AI is not the challenge. The challenge as an organization for me is the data and the data that sits within the different systems. How do we align that? To then bring it up to have some meaningful LLM running on top of that, or some level of agentic AI driving me or giving me some data or some meaningful insights.
Yeah, I think you used you referred to something very interesting, which I heard, and I'm observing that this is the data scattered in multiple places, for example. So, I mean, is there consideration around some sort of an automation on data validation, for example, or some sort of a continuous testing of the data that protects this sort of integrity of the data and signal, and then you can build some experiences on that?
So, I mean, so we look at all the solutions, process, signals, whatever, solutions, technology, and then all of that is driving down to, right, we've made a choice on a technology or whatever it is, and we know that we need, it doesn't matter what the process is, you need data to drive that process moving forward, whether it's in the supply chain, whether it's in the finance space, right? Talking about best of breeds, talking about any of the solutions, including bespoke solutions that you've got. I think what we always forget about is that human element, the human touch, which is like, how do I ensure that the data that's being fed into the system is accurate, or can be as accurate as possible? So I'm always looking at and challenging the systems and tools to say, right, what are you guys doing to ensure that when someone is putting some data in the system, that it is meaningful and relevant. So there's no point in having a price, but then the price just happens to be some fictitious price, or it happens to be in a different currency. So just simple things like that. How do we ensure that we build those things in? Coming back to the AI, I kind of see, well, we should be utilizing some of that AI capabilities to ensure that the data that we're capturing moving forward actually has gone through some level of AI or help of AI to actually help you clear that up. But I think we're still in that catch-up mode right now. And unfortunately, I don't know how long it's going to take for any organizations, or most organizations, to get us there. I don't know what you guys are seeing.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting paradigm. Use AI to create data so that it can serve itself later on downstream as well. But I guess the notion of everything being AI is kind of, creating this hype. But we've always done this data validations in programs with that same mindset that we have clean data and then it's in one place that we can use to report on. Awesome, great. So automation as you said, agentic and Gen AI, these different flavors, and I'm gonna give a challenge to our colleague in who's making it happen and delivery. That so how do you, how does this automation help you accelerate? Because that's what the goal is, right? You accelerate transformation. Um, or how do you protect it from destabilizing ultimately? Because it's an uncontrolled automation that does everything but.
I think both can be, well, all can be applied to both delivery and operational. I think that's quite interesting because a lot of the conversations we have about automation stem to a business operational perspective. But we're now using a lot of the automation capabilities in the delivery of the programs and the activities that provide the operational platform. So, I think automation accelerates transformation when it's focused on streamlining sort of repeatable processes that can reduce manual effort, and then free those teams to focus on sort of the higher value activities. It can most definitely destabilize, however, when it's sort of introduced into immature processes, when it's applied without proper governance, for sure. And there we see adding complexity, faster than the teams can adapt to it, and that will cause all sorts of disruption. But I think that the key thing for me, as I said at the beginning, Kuldeep, is we're seeing these automation accelerators both in delivery and operational, which is really fascinating, to be honest.
Yeah, I think you summarized it well. That automation or acceleration without any real maturity or discipline, it's uh, it's only one way. It never finishes. It creates a lot of other confusions and creates a lot of debt. Uh, but of course, discipline is non-negotiable. And once you have the discipline, I suppose you can introduce automation as well. And it's a it's a loop that has to the perfect loop that has to be created. Good data, good process, automation on top, of course, Gen AI, agentic, all different flavors. You can continue to then harvest that intelligence out from these. Great. Well, we continue on this acceleration path. We talk a little bit about other challenge that happens. We just talked about the AI discussion, but few things that are consistent. I think, Joe, you would have seen throughout your career trying to bring so many different pieces together as an architectural requirement. Is you're a great example of somebody who sat in as an intersection of business, IT, SIs, vendors, and of course, um, most of the time you're the one who's making sense of what everybody's trying to say to each other because they're not talking to one another directly. And how does one, in that sense, keeps that architectural north star right at the center of all these discussions and protect?
I think, I mean, for me, it's always about making sure that, okay, I'm not going to say I'm exaggerating, but at an enterprise architectural level, it is ensuring that everyone is aligned to the message, to what we're trying to do, ensuring that internally everyone's aligned and flag out any discrepancies, flag out any inconsistencies, flag out any issues that we will see by doing whatever it is that is being asked. Then go back to that to say, right, if you had open control, if you had free range, what would you do? How would you address it? That to me is internal alignment is absolutely key and first and has to be achieved first and foremost. Whether it's across, I mean, if we look at supply chain, there are so many disciplines within supply chain, ensuring that, okay, well, the logistics part is talking to the operations part, and we're talking to the merchandising part, talking to the planning part, just so that you've got that alignment. And then you've not got one part of the business or one part of the team going off and trying to do something that is not aligned to any of that. So it is making sure you've got the alignment, then coming back to RSIs and saying, right, here's our internal alignment. Are we all aligned to that? So we as a team, as a customer, we need to make sure that when we are talking, we're saying the same thing. If there is a discrepancy there, then I think that adds more confusion. And as a result, you're already starting on that part of the failure, which is because not everyone has understood what we're trying to do. So I'm trying to get all that internal alignment. I try and work on, okay, well, is it clear? Does person A asking for something and person B requiring something different? Do they both talk to each other? Do they both align? Does it all make sense? Then it's about going forward and asking RSIs to say, right, what are you doing about this? How do we address this? And what are the tools that we should be looking at or solutions that we should be looking at?
Yeah, so alignment, the communication, sort of proactively challenging each other. I think often that becomes a I shouldn't say full time, but I think near full time activity for somebody who is holding these pieces together, because you know that some of those pieces are so delicate and very crucial to the architectural North Star.
Yeah, we need to as architects, we need to also ensure that, okay, we understand it, but also then everyone else in that team understands it, and then it's communicated further down. And I think that's where we all need to do a better job at it. But yeah, I'm not saying I do a great job, but there's always discrepancies, there's always things that crop up, and ensure that we've got that alignment. Internally, from where our experience, and again, this is working with you guys, but as well as other sizes, actually implement a kind of an architecture structure to ensure that no major change takes place outside of a governing structure that has gone through and saying, right, here's what we're trying to achieve, here's what we're thinking about, and does it all make sense? If it doesn't, then can we all align on what are the next steps before going to someone external to say, right, here's my problem, how do I fix it?
Yeah, that's so relevant. And I guess now you're probably bombarded, if I may use that word, with every department wanting to do something with AI system of this sort or that.
Yeah, and again, there's two things. There's not just every department being bombarded with, okay, we want to do something in this space, we want to do something in this space, but we're also, as architects, we're also getting bombarded from the solution providers, which is use our AI version as opposed to that AI version, as opposed to that AI version, and we're all singing from hymn sheets effectively, and it's like, how do I now connect those dots, and which ones are the ones that are going to be more meaningful for an organization, for an enterprise?
Yeah, I mean, this is a fascinating topic. We could spend a little bit more time on it, but we will do that at other time. In terms of how do we, what are we learning new things about? I mean, there are some good old school principles that will be timeless for us, but there's still new things that we are also uncovering that we could leverage to help business. But let me move to a follow-on with you, Jeff. Obviously, our goal as SIs and as architects is to not just deliver value, but also to protect value, right? So, because we are supporting, we are always growing our business and architectures around it, and mistakes can create a lot of small mistake can create a lot of problems. So how do we do that? What disciplines do we protect and implement, making sure that enterprises continue to grow and harvest value from that?
So I'd say the delivery disciplines that we're always sort of shooting for in terms of that North Star is based on sort of rigorous incremental value delivery. that's where we're going to get to. But I think there are three sort of foundational elements that allow us to do that. And they're really the themes that we've been talking about for the last 3/4 of an hour in this session. The first is always going to be built on stable architecture, absolutely. Second, clear governance. And then thirdly, we've probably spoken about it less, but that sort of continuous learning. And no matter what technology we see, how it evolves, we talked about AI, of course we have. But for me, those three sort of cornerstones, if we can stay true to them, respect them, and give them all the attention that they deserve and need through that whole sort of delivery discipline, then that's going to give us the best chance of sort of protecting that longer term enterprise value that you were talking about.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. I think we are right on time. So we've done well in terms of getting through a lot of detail and a lot of valuable insights from you and you.
On-time delivery, that's what we're good
at. There you go.
That's well said. So, look, we could spend a lot more time on it. It's as we've all seen different eras of delivery and architecture and technologies, and we continue to learn more about what this new tech modernization that is going on will do to our businesses and enterprises. However, we have to end at this stage. So, but I would like to sort of summarize my insights from it, and of course, you are welcome to add as well in the closing. I feel in this modern world that we live in, where everything is everything is needed just now. If I make an order, I should have it on my doorsteps as soon as possible. The elegance of a commerce solution, so to speak. That elegance and effortlessness, so to speak, to the customer is built with a lot of tremendous planning and precision and orchestration and discipline underneath. And of course, architecture holds us together, and delivery discipline is a reassurance that we meet that elegance requirement. And in retail, of course, manufacturing as well, any friction ultimately shows up in a P&L. You ask any CFO that, what does a 5-minute delivery delay or 30 minutes delivery delay will do? They will always be able to point you to a line item on a P&L somewhere. And of course, the sales and marketing and customer organizations will always be able to point out on the NPS and other scores that we do. So it's architectural and delivery are seen as not in that light so often, but they're so fundamental to actually meeting those demands and promises that we make to our customers, that there's a lot more to it than just drawing flows and charts and Gantt charts, so to speak. There's real fundamental knowledge of domain, of technology, of customers' businesses, our businesses, and the ecosystem. And you have to do that while you're delivering day-to-day activities, that you keep abreast of the modern tools and trends as well at the same time. And ultimately, as we said, resilience is not a tool, it's a discipline, it's a design that we build in our processes and in our enterprise. For that, architecture will always be a cornerstone of that. So I will end on that note. I'd like to thank you, Joe, for taking the time and giving us this insight, and Jeff, to you as well for sharing your insights. And I look forward to welcoming you either individually or in other groups or together again.
Perfect. Cool. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.